The inflation report is out, and it does seem like inflation is hotter than expected for the month of September, which is the last inflation report before everybody goes out to the polls. So, look for a lot of gaslighting, look for a lot of it's really not that bad, and look for a lot of silence on Twitter about this today. But we'll be talking about that and what that means for the markets and everywhere else to go. And surprisingly enough, the finance is the big news story of the day, but we'll be going over some of that. In other news, Alex Jones is ordered to pay $965 million, almost $1 billion, for Sandy Hook. Now, is this for actual damages to the families, or is this to make sure that the rest of us stay in line? I guess we'll never know, but we'll talk about that and where we go with that and what happens with that. John Fetterman got in the news over his inability to speak during an NBC interview, and NBC is taking the blame for trying to make John Fetterman look bad, which is weird flex, but we'll see what's happening with that. And Zelensky appeals for $55 billion more dollars, US dollars, to cover their budget gap and shortfall. It is going to be all this and more. Welcome back to midterm season. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. So this is not good news. For Democrats anyway. I think the rest of us are going to start to see the light and wake up and see where the problems were in this. And I mean, again, remember, you're coming from somebody who was a Democrat up until the year 2008. When he first read Barack Obama's primary agenda, that was where I started. Actually, I don't even think it was because I read the primary agenda. It's the fact that he was winning on that agenda, that he was getting out there, and I saw a shift in the Democrat Party that had no way to go. Except, yeah, there was no way to go back to the Union Dems. As much as they're trying to court them right now, by the way, there's really no way to shift the party back in that direction, because if you did, then you lost all the people who voted for Barack Obama's primary agenda. But now here we sit, looking at the end result of some of that, and I think people are going to start to look up and realize that the core inflation report, which I will be pulling live on air, by the way, because I don't have it in the stack yet. I've got a tweet talking about it right now, but I don't have it in the stack yet. But while we're talking IBD today, I'll pull it up and we'll read into it and see. This could not have been worse for Democrats. And even gas prices right now are starting to come down just a little bit. At least here. Madison, they're actually coming down a little bit too. We'll be talking about that in a minute. But to have another big inflation report this close to the midterms in a time where you don't get another one to go and save you. I don't know how Dems pull it off in the midterms. Well, unless, of course, there is a gigantic horn with an air bubble at the end of it, and you just keep honk, honk, honk. If you do that, then maybe. But I don't know. And they're going to strut around, by the way, like pigeons on Twitter and say, oh, we still have this one. Because if we have to talk about inflation, we'll talk about evil Donald Trump and what he did to the deficit. And we'll say that it's his fault. And by the way, did you know that he had classified documents? You notice that story fell out of the news pretty quick too, by the way. Good job on those of you, by the way, who have. I have not seen, well, with the exception of the occasional, but Trump. I've not seen the name Trump on Twitter in a serious discussion in a couple weeks. So, anyway, that's what we have to say with that. We'll get into the news in just a moment before we get started. And by the way, I love fall. I like apples. I like all the stuff like that. But for whatever reason, when the temperature changes from hot to cold, it makes it impossible to get up. So sorry for the late start for the last couple days. It's just, I get up and the alarm is set for 5, and I've slept through the 5 alarm twice. I have another one set for 6, and then I snooze that through 6 there. But it just, by the time I was done snoozing through, it was already 6:50. I don't know what it is. And I went to bed at a decent hour. So it might just be the change in the weather, and hey, I might just be sick. Who knows? But let's get into it. Let's get started. Before we do, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys Podcast. Go check out Tweets by Brit at KTZed over at Twitter. Go check out Mr. Behavior over on the Twitch side. He does some good video gaming culture, and he will be entering the political fray again as soon as he's done with school, so go check that out. And PJ Patriot and his new co-hostess, Abby. Go check all of those people out. It's going to be a great time, and we always like shouting out the people who are good at bringing you the news by the common man for the common man, the news, the discussion, and the culture. I may not agree with everybody's particular takes on the list that I put out there, but they are forging forward and bringing you better news and a better news experience and a better culture experience. So go check out all that great programming, and let's get into the financial news of the day. Let's get the live chat up. See what we have going on here. See what you guys are doing. Scooby-Doo has been here every morning, and I love it. I'm here for it. Because tomorrow, when I read the live chat names, I get to say Scooby-Doo every day. And I like that. That's awesome. It's a nice throwback to my childhood. Alright, let's get started. On the Dow closed just slightly lower. Yeah, or was it low? Yeah, it was just slightly lower yesterday. So it went through. It actually stayed up through most of the day, even with the producer price index being as hot as it was. It stayed up throughout the day yesterday, and I don't know how. It did turn itself back south at the very end of the day, ending up yesterday at 29,210.85. So that's where we are at looking at the Dow. And the futures were looking decent, but they're not looking good anymore. Looking at your Bitcoin, that's actually because we had the financial news drop. Let's refresh that and see what we have going off here. From the Bitcoin is on sale if you're interested in Bitcoin. $18,358 and 20 US cents. That is down $792 and 70 US cents, or 4.14% on just the day. It looked like it stayed steady from midnight on until just before we got started going here, and then it just kind of dumped off as we went. So that's what we're seeing here. Let's bring this out to the 5-day and see that, yes, it's been on a steady decline on the 5-day. It kind of looks like it tried to rally itself back up throughout the day yesterday, and then and by the way, I'm thinking this is going to have something to do with inflation too, because people are going to look at this. And again, I've warned you, Bitcoin is an asset, even though Ron tells me it's not an asset. It is an asset out there that turns into cash at almost a moment's notice. I think it takes like 5 minutes to make this into usable cash if you have PayPal, which I do not recommend. We'll be looking through a thread of PayPal to where they lied to us and they knew that they were going to go back and do this kind of thing. But if you do have PayPal and Coinbase together, you can have Bitcoin back into US dollars within a few minutes, which to me shows again that this is the asset that if you need diapers, or if you need gas or food, if you're starving, need to go pay that quick bill really, really quick, otherwise they'll come and break your kneecaps. You just go to Coinbase and go, ooh, Bitcoin back into cash, and all of a sudden it's back into cash, which triggers another sell-off and lowers the price of it. So this is always one that I look at and say, this is because this is the safe cryptocurrency that Soccer Mom America likes. This is the one that Soccer Mom America is typically there to hold, and therefore when they're starting to have problems, they go back and sell. So this is a short-term indicator as to where the economy is going to go within the next probably couple days. The Dow is usually an indicator of where it's going to go within the next few weeks, but the Bitcoin is usually an indicator of the next couple days. So that's what we see with that. And we'll see what happens with that. Looking in at gas, it's actually, as I mentioned in the intro, coming down just a little bit here. Madison area. All the 4s are gone off this map. So there's no $4 a gallon gas over in Madison at all. Looks like the Quick Trip on the east side did come up just a little bit to 360. The one on the far west side is also at 360. The Speedway that was at 4 yesterday is now at 390. The Isthmus remains at 380. The BP over across from the Isthmus is just at 380. So we're still at 380s. It's not a huge drop, but it is, some of the higher price stations are starting to come back out of the rotation. So we will see with this, but probably over the weekend here, the cuts from OPEC Plus are going to start hitting too. So we do have 1,399, but that's an outlier. That's all the way out by McFarland, and that's what we see coming off of that. Let's read from IBD, which I did refresh right before we got started after the inflation report came back out. Dow futures dive on hot inflation report. 10-year yield tops 4% without a GDP to back it. From Scott Latonin, Dow futures dove more than 400 points on Thursday on hot inflation data from the Consumer Price Index. Third quarter earnings season heats up as Dow stock Walgreens jumped on better than expected earnings and sales results. The Labor Department's Consumer Price Index came out Thursday morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, which we will be looking at as soon as we're, I think, halfway through this article. Consumer prices rose 0.4% in September versus the previous month, hotter than the expected 0.2% rise. Inflation rose 8.2% in September from a year ago. Also hotter than estimates just below August's 8.3% reading. Meanwhile, first-time jobless claims are expected to rise 225,000 versus 219,000 in the previous week. Last September retail sales are out on Friday, which means that we'll start to see Who's going out and buying socks or a TV or all those little fun purchases that you don't have to do just to keep yourself alive? I've got a feeling that market is going to be brutal and abysmal. Let's have a look. Let's see what they gave us the numbers here, but let's grab from another source here. Consumer Price Index. Why? Let's take one from CNBC. I don't know why people didn't know this was coming. Honestly. That's one that surprises me because we'll be talking about the Producer Price Index in the next couple articles, and just based on the Producer Price Index, the fact that the cost of manufacturing the goods went up means that this was going to happen. Inflation increased from 0.4% in September, more than expected, despite rate hikes. From Jeff Cox. Prices consumers pays for a wide variety of goods and services rose more than expected in September as inflation pressures continue to weigh on the U.S. economy. The CPI for the month increased 0.4 for the month, more than 0.3 Dow Jones estimate according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics on a 12-month basis. The so-called headline inflation was up 8.2%, off its peak around 9% in June, but still hovering near the highest levels since the early 1980s. Excluding volatile energy prices, core CPI accelerated 0.6 against the Dow estimate of 0.4 increase. Core inflation was up 6.6 from a year ago. The report rattled financial markets with stock market futures plunging and treasury yields moving up. Another large jump in food prices boosted the headline number. The food index rose 0.8% on the month, the same as August, and was up 11.2% from a year ago. That's right, 11.2% inflation from 12 months ago on food, the thing that you have to buy every day. And you wonder why people aren't running out and buying a television or a pair of socks or a new t-shirt. You know, there was a while where I was buying a new t-shirt every week, and I can afford that crap now. Not with numbers like these. That increase helped offset a 2.1% decline in energy prices. That included a 4.9% drop in gasoline. Energy prices have moved higher in October, with the price of regular gasoline at the pump nearly 20 cents higher than a month ago, according to AAA. Closely watched shelter costs, which make up about 1/3 of CPI, rose 0.7 and are up 6.6% from a year ago. Transportation services also showed a big bump, increasing 1.9 in the month and 14.6 on the annual basis. Medical care costs rose 1% in September. The rise in costs meant more bad news for workers, whose average hourly earnings declined 0.1% for the month on an inflation-adjusted basis and are off 3% from a year ago, according to a separate BLS release. That's right. Your wages have gone down 3% with prices like this going the way that they have gone over the year. And I want to remind you, let me see if I can find the core CPI for this, because I want to remind you that this is also compounded off of what was happening last year. Consumer Price Index, September 2021. Looks like they will give us a PDF for this one. Okay, there we go, right there on the top. So when they say, 8%, 8%, but it's coming down, I do want to remind you that this is from the BLS right here. The all items index rose 5.4% for the 12 months ending September, compared to a 5.3% rise for the period ending in August. The index for all items, less food and energy, rose 4.0% over the last 12 months, the same increase as the period ending in August. The energy index rose 24.8% over the last 12 months. This was, by the way, at the time where the fuel costs were starting to skyrocket. And the food index increased 4.6% over that period. So this 8.3, which technically is down from the month before, and you're going to see some of the Twitter people going around strutting like pigeons to tell you that, oh, inflation's actually down. It was 8.4% last month, and it's now 8.3%. Do remind them that this is now on top of a 5.4% increase the year before. Which means we're sitting in a situation where your dollar is worth, this month, with the inflation coming out. Let me do some math, because it's not just 13.7. $12.1%. Your dollar is worth 12.1% less than it was at this time in 2020. Just to remind you. Let's go back to IBD. Markets today. On Thursday morning, BlackRock, Delta, Domino's, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing. Walgreens Boots Alliance released their quarterly earnings results. BlackRock inched higher after its third quarter results were backed up by taxpayer dollars. Oops, we're not supposed to say that. While Delta rose 4.3% despite missing quarter three estimates, as the carrier posted an upbeat forecast. Domino's rallied nearly 7% in early morning trade. I'm debating getting a cheap pizza this weekend, by the way. I don't know if I want to get Papa Murphy's or Domino's or Pizza Hut. I've had good pizza since then, and I've made my own pizza since I went back keto. But I do, over the weekend, I eat regular stuff over the weekend. But I've not had a good cheap pizza in a while. Where should I go? Papa Murphy's, which I do love the take and bake aspect of Papa Murphy's. I don't like Papa John's pizza. Or the Hut, or the Domino's. I'm thinking Domino's is going to be in the mix. Apple chip supplier Taiwan Semiconductor climbed 2.6% after issuing a better-than-expected quarter four revenue outlook, and Walgreens jumped more than 4% after beating earnings and sales estimates. EV leader Tesla traded down around 3% Thursday. Among the Dow Industrials, tech titans Apple and Microsoft were both sharply lower ahead of today's stock market open. Cardinal Health, ConocoPhillips, Denbury, Vertex Pharmaceuticals, as well as Dow stocks Chevron and Merck are among the top stocks to watch. Keep in mind that the ongoing stock market correction is a time for investors to sit on the sideline and build the watch list for top growth stocks. Cardinal Health and Vertex are on the IBD leaderboard. Chevron and Conoco were featured in this week's Stocks Near a Buy Zone column, along with two other top stock ideas. Vertex was IBD's stock of the day on Friday. Merck was Tuesday's IBD 50 stocks to watch pick. Today, ahead of Thursday's opening bell, Dow futures sold off 1.4% versus fair value, which means they're going to hit a new low if they open up at where the futures sold off to. While the S&P moved down 1.7, the tech-heavy NASDAQ dove 2.5. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. Among ETFs, the NASDAQ tracker Invesco QQQ Trust was down 2.5%, and the SPDR S&P 500 ETF fell 1.5%. The 10-year yield jumped Thursday, topping 4% after the hot inflation data. Meanwhile, U.S. oil prices fell around 1% on Thursday, sending West Texas Intermediate futures below $87 a barrel. Oil prices are threatening to add to these 3 straight days of losses. So, one other thing I want to point out, because we're talking about the Treasury yield. It turns out for the last few weeks I've been thinking wrong about the Treasury yield, because I do say that it doesn't have a GDP to back it up, which is actually important. It's important to see a robust GDP if you're going to see Treasury yields that high. But the reason that they're high right now is that the offer is, hey, buy this Treasury yield and you'll get 4% year over year. I didn't realize that's what it was. It's a marketing tactic, because the government needs and wants money on a voluntary basis rather than trying to force taxes out of you. So they want more people to go out and buy bonds. So that's why they're offering the 4%. That's why the price keeps going up, because they're getting desperate for bonds right now, is what's happening. I looked into that yesterday, and I read the article going around that and realized that I've been completely wrong about that for the past few weeks. So that's what I learned about 10-year Treasury yields today. Meanwhile, oil prices fell around 1% on Thursday, sending West Texas Intermediate below $87 a barrel. Oil prices are threatening to add to 3 straight days of losses. So, we'll see what happens with this. I just know that this doesn't work. But we'll see. We have read the CNBC, we've read the BLS. Let's, disclose.tv giving us our information here. Just so we can see the graph and laugh a little bit. U.S. inflation hits 8.2% in September, hotter than expected. Core CPI surges to 6.6%, the highest since 1982. U.S. futures drop after inflation data. There's your S&P 500 futures, which were climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing, and boom, done. So, that's what we have for that. Some more finance news. I think I got one more after this one too, talking about the producer price. The S&P closes lower, notching 6 days of losses ahead of key inflation report. From Carmen Reinecke and Tanaya Makil, the S&P fell Wednesday, notching a 6th consecutive daily loss and hitting the lowest close since November of 2020, as investors looked ahead to key consumer report that will inform the pace of the Federal Reserve's rate going forward. So this is what happened yesterday. Before we knew that we were going to get 8.3. The Dow shed 28.34 points, or 0.1, to close at 29,210.85. The S&P lost 0.33, falling to 3577.03. The Nasdaq inched lower by 0.09 to end at 10,417.10. Earlier in the day, the stocks ticked up and bond yields dropped after minutes from the Federal Reserve's September meeting were released in the afternoon. The minutes show the central bank expects to keep hiking interest rates and keep them high until inflation shows signs of cooling off. One comment at the meeting led optimism the Fed might slow its tightening campaign or even walk it back if there was more financial market turbulence. Several participants noted that particularly in the current highly uncertain global economic and financial environment, it would be important to calibrate the pace of further policy tightening with the aim of mitigating the risk of significant adverse effects on the economic outlook. The minutes stated. Stocks whipsawed between gains and losses when the September Producer Price Index, a gauge of final demand wholesale prices, came in higher than expected. The print was up 0.4 in September, more than the consensus estimate of 0.2 according to Dow Jones. Well, they keep getting it wrong, so I don't know why they would get it right at this point. So that's what the markets did yesterday, and this is the Producer Price Index. U.S. producer price inflation eases to still high 8.5%. So the cost to bring the goods to the factory, to make the goods that you're going to buy in the store, went up, and they're sitting here wondering, scratching their head thinking, why? Why, Ed? Why is the consumer price index going up when the producer price index is also going up? I can't figure that out. From Christopher Rugeber. Inflation at the wholesale level rose 8.5% in September, from a year earlier, the third straight decline, though costs remain at painfully high levels. Yeah, you're still going to try and gaslight us and tell us this is a decline, when we know, everybody knows that this is compounding on top of the inflation that started at this time last year. Wednesday's report from the Labor Department showed that the Producer Price Index, which measures price changes before they reach the consumer, rose 0.4 in September from August after 2 months of declines. That's your fuel cost, by the way, your energy cost to build the thing. The September monthly increase was larger than expected and pushed higher by a big increase in hotel room costs and higher prices for other services. Food costs also rose in September from August after a slight drop in the previous month. The cost of fresh and dry vegetables soared nearly 16% in September from August. The larger than expected monthly increase in overall wholesale prices suggests inflation pressures are still strong in the U.S. economy, with the Federal Reserve likely to continue its rapid pace of interest rate hikes at its next meeting in November. Wholesale gas costs fell last month, but will likely reverse in the coming months now that oil prices are rising again in the wake of planned production cuts by many oil exporting nations. Grocery bills are rising at their fastest pace in decades, and prices at the gas pump are rising again, squeezing consumers' budgets. But hey, no more mean tweets, right? Excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core prices rose 0.3% in September from August for the third straight month and 7.2% compared with a year earlier. Overall, wholesale inflation peaked at 11.7% in March. Services prices, including healthcare, lodging, and shipping, rose 0.4% in September, the most in 3 months. The Federal Reserve officials have recently cited rising services prices as a source of concern because they can take longer to reverse since they mostly reflect the impact of rising wages. Very true. Healthcare rose last month, driven higher by a 0.7% increase in the nursing home prices. Stubbornly high inflation is draining Americans' bank accounts, frustrating small businesses, and raising alarm bells. And by the way, this is coming from the Associated Press, which, as we've noticed, is heavily editorialized in favor of Democrats. This is coming from the Associated Press. If the Associated Press is telling you that stubbornly high inflation is draining Americans' bank accounts, while Democrats control the House, the Senate, and the presidency, you've got a problem. Frustrating small businesses and raising alarm bells at the Federal Reserve, it's also causing political headaches for President Biden and congressional Democrats, most of whom will face voters in midterm elections in less than a month. The Fed has boosted its benchmark short-term interest rate by 3 percentage points since March to combat rising prices. It's the fastest pace of rate hikes since the early 80s. Higher rates are intended to cool consumer and business borrowing and spending and bring down inflation, while the U.S. government continues to fire hose more cash into the economy, our economy, as well as fire hose more cash into the Ukraine. So, we'll take you out of the market, but hey, let's make sure the federal government can continue to spend, baby, spend. Wednesday's producer price data captures inflation at an earlier stage of production and can often signal where consumer prices are headed. It also feeds into the Fed's preferred measure of inflation, which is called the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index. So, that is what we have for finance for the day. You know what the worst part of this is? You continue to fire hose money into our economy, stimulus package after stimulus package after stimulus package. And you continue to fire hose and print more money into the Ukrainian economy and the global economy. Stimulus package and weapons package and stimulus package after weapons package after stimulus package after weapons package. The worst part of this is, if they'd have kept the fuel prices down to where they were at the end of 2020, not even down to where they were in the middle of 2020, but where they were at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, we might not have even noticed the inflationary issues here. If you'd have kept everything going, started drilling in this country, or continued drilling in this country, and done everything you could to keep the gas prices down, the amount of inflation would have been higher. It would have still been hot inflation as compared to what the government wants, but it would have been it wouldn't have been hitting your wallet right now, because it's the cost of fuel to get everything, to get the apples to the grocery store, to get the big screen TVs over to Target. That's the big spiraling factor in what's driving a lot of this, and also to get the fuel to the fuel station. It's a spiraling factor. I am not saying that what the government is doing wouldn't have caused inflation, because it would have. It was the same thing I said when the first stimulus check came out. I said this is going to cause inflation. But it's a point where we're not sitting here talking about this top of the story, top of the news every day. When that starts to happen, it's because we have a big spiral effect, and now on top of that, stagflation coming in, layoffs coming, the average wage going back down. This is not going to be pretty. I'm telling you that right off the bat. But hey, you know what? There are no more mean tweets. All right. We have an important announcement from Token Diversity Hire. I hope you guys are ready for this one. This is the most important news of the day, because it wasn't yesterday. The day before was National Coming Out Day. Let's listen.
Being gay in my family wasn't something that you mentioned out loud or celebrated. But my family, like many, many other families, grew to accept who I was. They saw that who I loved didn't change who I was as a person. It didn't change the things I liked to do, and it didn't change the goals I had for my life. Being gay.
There you go, the most important news that you'll hear today. It wasn't allowed to be talked about in Token Diversity Hire's home. Don't you feel much more complete now that you know that? Yeah, keep your damn sex life to yourself. That's the perfect way to do this. Now, I will admit that I live a fairly socially liberal life because I really don't care what it is that people do. I'll be friends with anybody. I don't care. What you do in your home is your business. But one of the things that I've noticed a lot as I go through, and I'm not going to name names, so I'm not going to put her on blast, is I'm going to use a girl that I've never actually met in person, but we follow each other on Instagram, and we live fairly close to each other. We had a common interest in a common celebrity at one point, is how we actually came to follow each other at one point. And we've had conversations through DM before. She kind of did help me a little bit when I was going through one of my more depressed phases. So I'm really happy, no matter what, that she came into my life. But realistically, when I look at this, fairly shortly after we crossed paths with each other, I think within a year, she came out, which was cool. I don't care. I've seen pictures of her with her girlfriend. Her girlfriend looks like a dude. I'm going to tell you right off, her girlfriend looks like a dude. And this girl is like ultra hyper feminine. Always wears, I don't think I've ever seen the girl wear pants, always wears a dress, constantly, that kind of thing. But one of the things that I've noticed is as we go further and further down, because this all happened back in, I think, 16 or 17. I think it was 16. Because I think it was before I moved in with my ex. My ex and I were going out, but it was before we moved in. So it was probably like 16 or so. Yeah, it was, but had to have been because we moved in together in 2016. But so she came out probably mid 2017, and as we've been going on, her personality has been replaced more and more. Like, you don't see, again, I'm not going to name names, but you don't see the girl anymore. You just see, hey, I'm a lesbian. I like girls. You don't see the Marvel posts. You don't see the dresses, the upcycles, anything else like that. It's just, it all becomes more, hey, I'm gay. One of the things that I actually do, and I'll give Token Diversity Hire credit where credit is due, is the fact that up until this came out, I had forgotten that she was gay. Like, she doesn't make that the front and center of her personality. But so many people that I see do that. And again, it's like, I don't care who you sleep with. No, you're not giving me a gotcha because I'm a conservative and... I'm not really a conservative either, but that's the other part. But I'm a conservative, and that means that I have to hate you because you're gay, so I'm giving you a gotcha. You have to accept me now. Like, I don't care who you bang. Another person who I've known my entire life, literally, because well, I don't want to, again, I don't want to put names on blast, but her and her girlfriend, I've known them since I was a little kid. Little kid. But there again, it's like their entire personality was the fact that they were girlfriends. The one woman, the one I knew less tangentially, had me try to fix her cell phone one time, and I had a password in, and the password was 6969. And I thought about that for a second. I'm like, oh, it's because that's how you two do it. Oh. Well, now I'm sad. So, that's one thing off of that. And yes, by the way, Token Diversity Hire, there's our coming out story. Alright, on to some serious news here. I don't know why my DMs are open right now, but I found this right before we went live yesterday. And I had thought about bringing it up on the show yesterday, but I decided against it because, well, I thought we could spend some more time on it today. We did have a fairly packed show yesterday. So, reading here, King Titan, CPI expert, says, I have irrefutable evidence that PayPal is lying. They say the notice went out in error, but it was uploaded to their website since at least Tuesday, the 27th of September, 2022 at 22:33:12 UTC, and was attested by archive.org here. That is the Wayback Machine, which you should not use, and I'm a little surprised that this is still there. This is a screenshot. Alright, so this is last updated on November 3rd, 2022, according to the Wayback Machine. You are independently responsible for complying with all applicable laws of your actions related to your use of PayPal services, regardless of purpose of the use. In addition, you must adhere to the terms of acceptable use policy. Violations of this acceptable use policy constitutes a violation of the PayPal user agreement and may subject you to damages, including liquidating damages of $2,500 US per violation, which may be debited directly from your PayPal accounts. As outlined in the user agreement, see Restricted Activities and Hold section of PayPal user agreement. And there's the proof also from archive.today, which you should be using. Again, last updated November 3rd, 2022, which, by the way, hasn't happened yet. So there's proof from two archival services that this notice was prepared at least a week in advance and was already pre-filled with the date it was prepared to go public. Although it is strange that they wrote last updated November 3rd, 2022, even though it was still September. But wait, there's more. I downloaded the file and checked the metadata. You can see the author is a person named Yuki Lin, and you can see she has been working on this document since 22/9/21 at 5:52:44 UTC +8. Yep, there's your create date right there, and time. There's your author. I don't know who this person is, but I got a feeling that King Titan is going to tell us. So they've been working on this document for almost 2 weeks before it went public, and it was finalized and sitting on their website with the date of publication already filled in for at least a week. Mistake? You decide. Below is the UTC +8 map, where it was written. Which is interesting. And I'm not going to say a whole lot because, this is a YouTube video. But it does appear that a person named Yuki Lin wrote this at UTC, the UTC time zone, which includes places like Singapore, Australia, a section of Russia, and China. Apparently there's new evidence. Oh no, this was at the end. He put this down here so he could tag Disclose, Zero Hedge, Crab Crawler, and Styx Official. And with that, we go down and we see that PayPal drops off. This is 3 days ago. The Quartering putting this out here, which I've not listened to Jeremy's interpretation of this. PayPal whistleblower comes forward. Exclusive information on Yuki Lin, the faceless offer of the PayPal AUP internal Slack message, and evidence of something more sinister going on. Let's blow this up and see. Outsourced vendor, no profile picture, located in China. Working remotely, no employee ID number. Turns out the author of the AUP doesn't even work at PayPal. She's an outsourced Chinese vendor working remotely for PayPal since September of 2020. Looking at the metadata of the empty document, which replaced the AUP after the public backlash, we can see who was responsible for trying to fix the mistake. Zhuang Win. Zhuang Win's internal PayPal profile, we can see how the profile of a proper PayPal employee looks. Employee ID number, location, times, address, office number, things like that. Looking at the people directly above Yuki Lin, we see there's no Duong Win, which means PayPal assigned someone from outside the Yuki Lin hierarchy to handle the AUP issue. So I'd like to see where this person got his source from, and some of the stuff, again, given the fact that I'm not in IT, I don't understand all of this. I'm going to put the link to this thread in the chat, and then I'm going to throw a link in the Discord, and I'm going to see what Seawall makes of it. What he can come off of this, but it does seem like, yeah, they were planning on doing this for a while. So let me get this up here so you guys can go through it. What an interesting hypothesis. Take the tracker out of that. So there you go. If you guys want to go analyze through this and you have a Twitter account, or maybe I'll have to go back and put it manually in Twitch because it doesn't seem like it wants to work. Take the tracker out of that too. Let me go put this in the Discord real quick. And then I gotta pull the tracker out of this one too, otherwise Midget B will cry. And I hate to see a grown man cry, no matter how small he is. So, there is your update on PayPal. Go ahead and have a look through that and see what you guys can make out of it. But there's some stuff going on. And again, my big question with this is this legal? Would it be legal for them to go back and do something like this? Is it legal for a private company to deprive you of your life or property without having a corresponding government statute? Because I thought it was only the government that was able to do that without arbitrating through a court. And again, I would think that if PayPal was planning to do something like that, they'd have to arbitrate it through a local court before asking you to forego property, which means they'd have to sue you. But I'm also not a lawyer, so I don't know the legalese behind something like that. No, Nightbot's not on a censorship trip. It's just that we had some Aryan Nation types come in here for a while, and they like to spam caps and emotes and all that kind of stuff, and they ruined it for everybody else. From the Associated Press, Alex Jones ordered to pay $965 million for Sandy Hook lies. From David Collins. And by the way, we'll have some more editorializing from the Associated Press here. This is more in line with what they usually do. Jurors ordered a conspiracy theorist, Alex Jones, on Wednesday to pay nearly $1 billion to Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting victims, relatives, and an FBI agent, who said he turned their loss and trauma into years of torment by promoting the lie that the rampage was a hoax. The $965 million verdict is the second biggest big judgment against the InfoWars host for spreading the myth that the deadliest school shooting in U.S. history never happened, and that grieving families seen in news coverage were actors, hired as part of a plot to take away people's guns. The verdict came in a defamation lawsuit filed by some families of the 26 people who were killed in the 2012 shooting, plus an FBI agent who was among the first responder. A Texas jury in August awarded nearly $50 million to the parents of another slain child. Robbie Parker, who lost his 6-year-old daughter, Emily, said outside the Connecticut court that he was proud of what we were able to accomplish was just to simply tell the truth. And it shouldn't be this hard, and it shouldn't be this scary, said Parker, who became an early target of conspiracy theorists after he spoke at a news conference the day after the shooting. The jury awarded him the most of any of the plaintiffs, $120 million. Jones wasn't at the court, but reacted on his InfoWars show. Let me see if there's video of that. Probably not. It's probably just all going to be mainstream stuff. Oh, listen to our anchor tell you what you can find here. Yeah, that's all it is. It's all courtroom stuff. They're not going to show Alex Jones on his show. Let's see. As courtroom video showed the jury awards being read out, Jones said that he himself has never mentioned the plaintiffs' names. All made up! Hilarious! So this is what a show trial looks like. I mean, this is the left completely out of control. Jones's lawyer, Norm Pettis, portrayed the trial as unfair and pledged to appeal. Today is a very, very, very dark day for your freedom of speech, he said outside the court. The jury awarded various sums to the victims' relatives who testified that they were threatened and harassed for years by people who believed the lies told on Jones's show. Strangers showed up at the families' homes to record them. People hurled abusive comments on social media. Mark Barden testified that conspiracy theorists urinated on the grave of his 7-year-old son, Daniel, and threatened to dig up the coffin. Barden and his wife were together awarded $86 million. Now retired FBI agent William Aldenberg awarded $90 million, described the horror he saw at the school as he responded alongside other law enforcement, and his outrage at seeing online claims that he was an actor. Erica Lafferty, the daughter of the slain Sandy Hook principal, Dawn Hochsprung, testified that people mailed rape threats to her house. I wish that after today I can just be a daughter grieving my mother and stop worrying about conspiracy theorists, Lafferty said outside the court. But she predicted that Jones' hate, lies, and conspiracy theories will follow both me and my family through the rest of our days. To the plaintiff, William Sherlock, the verdict shows that the internet is not the wild, wild west, and that your actions do have consequences. He had testified about seeing online posts that falsely pointed that the shooting was a hoax, that his slain wife, school psychologist Mary Sherlock, never existed, and that he was part of a financial cabal and somehow involved in the school shooter's father, and more. He told jurors, shooting deniers, vitriol made him worry for his family's safety. I'm going to talk about the number here for just a second, because people are pointing out the fact that The people who tanked the economy didn't see a fine like this back in the 2000s. Which I don't know the exact number off of that, but let's see. What does it mean when you're ordered to pay almost $1 billion to families who allegedly you never said the name of, when you're being tried by a judge who has been insulting and demeaning to you for the entire trial? This is not about getting justice for the families. If there was justice to be sought for the family, I'd be in support of it. If they have any sort of recourse where they can't go to work for a little while, they can't go back and adjust their lives, etc., I would be open to having the discussion. I don't know how I would fall, but I'd be open to having the discussion of a few $1,000s, maybe totaling up to a couple million, for pain and suffering for that. But for a $965 million verdict, that is a message to you and to me. Partially why I kind of stumbled over my words when I talked about maybe this was. And that's because this is a way to shut you up. To shut me up. To shut everybody up. To make you afraid to talk about these kinds of things. This is silencing of dissent. I don't know if Sandy Hook happened or not. I've seen enough evidence around to say that it might have been a hoax, but I've seen enough evidence around to say that it might be true. I don't know enough to say yes or not it was. I have questions about it, given the timing, given the fact that these kinds of things don't seem to happen unless we're in the middle of a gun grab agenda. They only seem to happen when certain administrations are in office and when certain agendas are on the table. They only seem to happen in these times. So I do have questions about it. I do believe that a massacre happened there. As for what drove it, what caused it, or everything else, I have questions about that. But regardless of my thoughts on this, almost $1 billion from an independent media voice is the message out there to anybody else who sits there in the living room or does independent media or does anything outside of the scope of what the big companies, NBC, CBS, ABC, Disney, or anybody else tells you you're allowed to talk about. You better shut your mouth or you'll be the next one sitting in that courtroom. So, Alex Jones. CNN reporter describes the tension inside the courtroom ahead of the Alex Jones verdict, and we've got CNN video of this one.
The jury has just awarded nearly $1 billion in damages to Sandy Hook elementary families and an FBI agent in the Connecticut defamation trial against Alex Jones. 8 families and a first responder sued the far-right conspiracy theorist for the lies he told about the 2012 school massacre. This trial is the second of 3 against Jones concerning the Sandy Hook massacre and comes after a Texas jury decided in August that Jones and his company should pay nearly $50 million, but the Connecticut jury nearly $1 billion. Let's go straight to CNN's Bryn Gingras outside the courtroom. Bryn, you were in there when these really big figures were read out loud. Walk us through the jury's decision.
Big figures, John, leading up to the announcement of these numbers, even the jurors were taking a deep sigh, and there was just so much pressure and tension inside that room. And then what a release from these family members when those numbers were being read and tallied. I can tell you, as we've talked about, Robbie Parker, he has received the biggest amount of this nearly $1 billion awarding of compensatory damages, and he just put his hands in his face. He started crying. And John, something I just want to tell you is that these family members have been coming to this trial for several weeks now here in Waterbury, listening through testimony, doing their own testimony, recounting where they were when they learned the news about their loved ones dying, and they themselves have become this family. And that is what I saw in the courtroom as these numbers were being read. They would be fist bumping each other. They were crying for each other. I can tell you that David Wheeler, who, if you remember, Alex Jones said he was actually the FBI agent Bill Oldenburg, and they spread that all around, that they were crisis actors. They weren't really who they said they were. He cried for Bill Oldenburg for the amount that he received. Bill Oldenburg was not here today. He has been here most of the time, though. So I just want to really highlight that this was such a release, such a validation for these family members who have been really living through hell, waiting for this verdict to come in, and now they have an idea of how much Alex Jones and his company will pay for the damages that they caused, the emotional distress that they caused him.
Hold on, let's back that up for just a second.
The jury has just awarded.
Let's grab the last few seconds of that clip again, because I heard something that interested me.
For these family members who have been really living through hell, waiting for this verdict to come in, and now they have an idea of how much Alex Jones and his company will pay.
This isn't just about shutting Jones down. They're taking InfoWars with it.
How far away do you think the U.S. is from legalization?
You know, listen, I think everybody wants it legalized, and I think...
I don't know why they're not going to give me a pause function off of that. So, no, this isn't just about going after Alex. This is about retribution to InfoWars. I didn't catch that at first. Well, that's what we see. Let's talk Kari Lake. We all like Kari Lake. I like Kari Lake. I don't know if you guys do. I like Kari Lake. Kari Lake interview on Arizona PBS canceled after Clean Elections Commission backs out of a mid-ranker. From Taylor Seeley. The solo interview with Republican candidate for governor Kari Lake that was scheduled for Wednesday evening was canceled abruptly just hours before it was to start. The Arizona Citizens Clean Elections Commission backed out of the event that was to be hosted in partnership with Arizona PBS, KAET, after the television station agreed onto a separate interview with Democrat Katie Hobbs. Lake was to appear for an interview on statewide television after Hobbs declined to attend the debate organized by the commission and Arizona PBS. When a candidate agrees to a debate but their opponent declines, the commission organizes a Q&A session for the person who agreed to participate in. Hobbs had previously asked for separate town hall-style interviews, but the commission held a public hearing and rejected the request. Arizona PBS, however, separately invited Hobbs to sit down for an interview on October 18th, according to Hobbs' spokesperson. AZ Central, I hate to tell you this, but I have as many free articles as I want left, because I will run it through the archive and still get the free article. So you can take that little bit of information down here and you can calm the F down. Arizona PBS had not notified leaders of the commission, who apparently learned of the arrangement after Hobbs announced it Wednesday morning on MSDNC, leading to the dramatic cancellation. The commission released a statement Wednesday saying that they were unaware of Arizona PBS's scheduled interview with Hobbs and that the station had broke from our shared practice by planning it. The commission is now looking for a new venue, partner, and date for a future interview with Kari Lake. Yeah, we don't have fingers on the scale by any stretch of the imagination, do we? InfoWars will be replaced with another source. Perhaps that other source will be called TurnSomePagesProductions.com. by the way, as we go into the winter months, we'll I know that it's going to be getting colder, but we'll start. I'll throw the tin cup back out to see if we can't get that up and running again too. So. From the Blaze, unvaccinated have been the most discriminated against that I've ever witnessed in my lifetime. Alberta Premier says. From Alex Nitzberg. And then, of course, she had to go back and walk it back. In the nation of Canada, our home and native land. Alberta's new premier, Danielle Smith, called out the extreme discrimination that people have experienced for choosing to forego the pinko pox jab, noting that it represents the worst discrimination she's ever seen during her life. Those who opted to get the jabs had the most restrictions on their freedoms last year, Smith said, noting that she does not think that she has ever in her life experienced a scenario where an individual was fired from work, blocked from watching their children play hockey, prevented from visiting people in long-term care or the hospital, or barred from taking a flight. Smith said the unvaccinated have been the most discriminated against group that I've ever witnessed in my lifetime. Man, that's a pretty extreme level of discrimination that we've all seen. She said that she considers it unacceptable and noted that we are not going to create a segregated society based on medical decision. I tried to do the Alberta accent. Jordan Peterson minus the voice. I don't know how well it's working, but... The Toronto Star reported that during her campaign, Smith pledged to protect the unvaccinated under the Alberta Human Rights Act. During her remarks on Tuesday, Smith said that we have to stop trying to victimize those in a group, bucko, that have made a different decision, and that the best avenue to make clear such discrimination is unacceptable to alter the Human Rights Act. Or clean your room. Let me see what they give here. Yep.
At it is that the community that faced the most restrictions on their freedoms in the last year were those who made a choice not to be vaccinated. I don't think I've ever experienced a situation.
Holy crap, she does sound like Peterson without the Kermit voice. I was just trolling the Alberta accent, but she really does sound like that, doesn't she?
In my lifetime, where a person was fired from their job, or not allowed to watch their kids play hockey, or not allowed to go visit a loved one in long-term care or hospital, or not allowed to go get on a plane to either go across the country to see family or even travel across the border. So they have been the most discriminated against group that I've ever witnessed in my lifetime. That's a pretty extreme level of discrimination that we have seen. I don't take away any of the discrimination that I've seen in those other groups that you mentioned, but this has been an extraordinary time in the last year in particular. And I want people to know that I find that unacceptable, that we are not going to create a segregated society on the basis of a medical choice.
All right, listen to that with Kermit voice for just a second, because you know I'm right. But you see, the thing with this is, and I'm telling you, man, I find that unacceptable. And it's a freedom of choice of your medical decision.
I think that there was a lot of hope that the vaccine would offer a sterilizing immunity. And as a result, I think everybody was working very hard to get to a high level of vaccination. We've now seen that it mutates dramatically, and we have to start treating it a lot more like influenza. Now, influenza has about 1/3 of the population and decides each year to protect themselves with vaccination. I think we're right now at a level of booster shots of 39% of people.
All right, so that's what she said, but of course she had to go back and walk it back. From Calgary CTV News, Alberta Premier not apologizing for saying unvaccinated are the most discriminated group. From Tyson Fedor and Melissa Gilligan. Stuart Gilligan Griffin. Despite calls for her to apologize for saying the unvaccinated are the most discriminated group she's witnessed in a lifetime, Danielle Smith stood by her remarks on Wednesday, but did try to explain the intention behind her words. Smith's comments came during her first media conference on the job on Tuesday, in which she said that the way unvaccinated residents have been treated is unacceptable. That's a pretty extreme level of discrimination that we have seen, she said. In a statement released Wednesday, the premier said that she did not intend to trivialize the discrimination faced by minority communities or other persecuted groups to create any false equivalencies to the terrible historical discrimination and persecution suffered by so many minority groups over the last decades and centuries. Bucko. Smith says her intention was to underline the mistreatment of unvaccinated Canadians and how they were punished by not being able to work, travel, or in some cases, see loved ones. Her comments on Tuesday sparked swift criticism, including from Alberta's official opposition. Danielle Smith needs to apologize for these comments. NDP Justice critic Irfan Sabir said she's already demonstrated on her first official day in office that she is not ready to lead for all Albertians. In an interview with CTV News, Sabir said there's been discrimination in all fronts in Alberta. People are literally getting hurt because of their faith, he said. Hate-motivated crimes are on the rise. But there's no apology, and I actually think that was good. So that's what we say for that. From my neck of the woods, Dan O'Donnell, from 1130 WISN, which is green check verified, by the way. Congressional committee launches investigation into Milwaukee votes 2022, from Dan O'Donnell. The House Representatives Committee on House Administration, which oversees federal elections, has launched an investigation into Milwaukee votes 2022. The controversial program in which the city of Milwaukee has partnered with a Democrat firm on a Get Out the Vote drive. Republicans on the committee, led by Wisconsin Representative Brian Stiles, sent a letter to Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson demanding all communication with the city has had with GPS impact. The Democrat group running Milwaukee Votes 2022, as well as a detailed explanation of how your office's involvement with Milwaukee Votes 2022 complies with relevant state and federal law. We write today to express our concern about the recent announcement of the Milwaukee Votes 2022 campaign, a privately funded government-sponsored partisan Get Out the Vote effort you endorsed while acting in your official capacity as mayor of Milwaukee, the congressman wrote Johnson. The Wisconsin Assembly also launched an investigation into Milwaukee Votes 2022, and the Republican Party of Wisconsin has filed a lawsuit in the state seeking an injunction stopping the program. Which, yeah, if that is the case, by the way, then no, you can't do that. Not in your official capacity. You can't act in a partisan fashion. Not in official avenues. That's against the law. But there is going to be an attempt somewhere to do the honking. Kinzinger, back in the news. Completely irrelevant, but back in the news from the Chicago Sun-Times. GOP Rep Adam Kinzinger endorses Democrats running against election deniers. Why? Because of course he did. No author given. Adam Kinzinger continued his drive to defeat Republican election deniers and conspiracy mongers, releasing on Tuesday his list of endorsements for the November elections, including Democrats and an independent. Dude, just renounce your party membership already. Kinzinger from Shanahan, who did not seek re-election, no, he got kicked out of his district, get it right, is running his midterm plays through his country's first political operation. Democracy cannot survive, Kinzinger said on Tuesday on MSDNC's Morning Joe, when we live in a bed of lies. Kinzinger has not said what he will do when he leaves Congress in January, even though he was eyeing up the other seat across from Scarborough. He is a member of the January 6th Unselect Committee, probing the Capitol Selfie Fest, with the panel's next hearing Thursday at noon Chicago time. Oh, great. Another hearing that nobody's going to watch. I don't think we're even going to cover that tomorrow because I don't think they're going to bring anything else forward. But they do have to try to keep the name Trump in everybody's mouth coming into the midterms. In a statement, he said, "Country First will be investing in each of these races in the way it deems most helpful, including fundraising, advertising, texting, grassroots support, and GOTV, the same strategy it successfully employed throughout the primaries." No Illinois candidates are on Kinzinger's list. Shocker. Kinzinger is focusing on contests featuring election deniers on the ballot. He made picks in 4 Secretary of State contests in swing states, with these elected officials key to overseeing elections in states where former President Trump pushed to overturn the results. That's 4 Democrats: Adrian Fontes in Arizona, Cisco Aguilar in Nevada, Steve Simon in Arizona, and Jocelyn Benson of Michigan, and Republican Brad Raffensperger in Georgia, who Kinzinger noted in a statement overcame tremendous pressure from Donald Trump and his supporters to find enough votes to declare Trump the winner. Few politicians are willing to risk their careers to do the right thing, which is why it's so important to support those like Brad Raffensperger who do. Well, we can probably look up and see that those 5 people are probably not going to be reelected. From the Associated Press, NBC reporters' comments about Fetterman draws criticism. Yes, let's not criticize the fact that the man who is expected to read legalese, engage in debate on the Senate floor, and give speeches cannot hear the spoken word and translate it into actual metadata in his head anymore because of a stroke. Fetterman, dude, you've got to drop out of this race. It's too important of a race, though, to give it back over to a Republican. From David Bowder. The reality is they went all in on this dude, and it's pretty much all that they can hinge their hope on. If Mehmet Oz wins this seat, there does not seem to be a path right now forward unless there's a major honkening again to put the Senate into Democrat hands. An NBC News correspondent who interviewed Pennsylvania Senate candidate John Fetterman says an on-air remark she made about him having difficulty following parts of their conversation should not be seen as commentary on his fitness for office after he suffered a stroke. Are you kidding? But reporter Dasha Burns' comment that Fetterman appeared to have trouble understanding small talk prior to their interview has attracted attention, and Republicans have retweeted it as they seek an advantage in the closely followed Senate race between Fetterman and Oz. Look, I don't like Oz. I'm going to tell you that right off the bat. But this human being is not capable of holding this office. Fetterman, a Democrat, suffered a stroke on May 13th, and his health has emerged as a major issue in the campaign. Burns' Friday interview with Fetterman, which aired on Tuesday, was his first on-camera interview since his stroke. He used a closed captioning device that printed the text of Burns' questions on a computer screen in front of him. Fetterman appeared to have a little trouble answering the questions after he read them, although NBC showed him fumbling for the words empathetic. Burns said that when the captioning device was off, it was clear he was understanding our conversation. It wasn't clear, rather, he was understanding our conversation. This is just nonsense, business reporter and podcaster Kara Swisher, who had a stroke herself in 2011, said on Twitter. Maybe this reporter is just bad at small talk. Swisher recently conducted an interview with Fetterman for her podcast and said, "I was really quite impressed with how well he's doing. Everyone can judge for themselves, Swisher said. She called the tax on Fetterman because of his health appalling. A New York Magazine reporter, Rebecca Traister, who interviewed the candidate for a cover story titled The Vulnerability of John Fetterman, tweeted that his comprehension is not at all impaired. He understands everything. It's just that he reads it and responds in real time. It's a hearing auditory challenge. Right, but you need to be able to use those skills in the Senate. I'm telling you right off the bat, if this guy cannot listen to the spoken word and understand it, he is going to falter in the Senate. The people of Pennsylvania deserve better. To be fair, they deserve better than Dr. Oz, too, but they deserve better than to have this going to the Senate to represent them. But of course, the story isn't about the fact that the man has to have teletype in order to function in the Senate. The story is the fact that NBC might have said something mean about John Fetterman. They must be pro-MAGA. What do we do? It's disgusting. Breaking, but from the post-millennial. JP Morgan Chase cancels Kanye West bank accounts. No author given. Oh, I don't know if I want to read this or not. It's Candace Owens. I don't believe a word that Candace Owens says. And because I said that out loud into a microphone, she's probably going to dox me. We're skipping that one. I don't care for Candace. From Reuters. Ukraine Zelensky appeals for $55 billion to cover budget gap and reconstruction. From Andrea Shalal and David Lauder. Volodymyr Zelensky on Wednesday appealed to internet donors to increase, international donors, not internet. Well, maybe they'll get some of those too. To increase their financial support, saying more money was needed to rebuild schools and homes destroyed by months of Russian bombardment. Zelensky, speaking by video link to finance ministers at the World Bank and International Monetary Fund annual meetings in Washington, said Ukraine needed about $55 billion to $38 billion to cover next year's estimated budget deficit and another $17 billion to start to rebuild critical infrastructures, including schools, housing, and energy facilities. The more assistance Ukraine gets now, the sooner we will come to end to Russian war, and sooner and more reliably we will guarantee that such cruel war will not spread to other countries, Zelensky said. IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva, World Bank President David Malpass, and U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen responded by underscoring the determination of the global community to continue to support Ukraine, that none of them are officially allied with. On paper. Georgieva said the IMF estimated Ukraine would need $3 billion to $4 billion in external financing to help per month next year, and possibly more to keep its economy running as the Russian invasion that began in February drags on. She said Ukraine's international partners have committed a $35 billion grant and loan financing for Ukraine in 2022, enough to close the financing gap for this year, but its financing needs would remain very large in 2023. She praised the Ukrainian officials for progress in normalizing economic policies and stabilizing the economy despite extremely difficult circumstances since the start of the war. But risks remain exceedingly high, as demonstrated by Russian missile attacks on Ukraine this week, and high levels of external help would remain necessary to cover ongoing budget costs and initial infrastructure repairs, Georgieva said. Yellen said the U.S. would begin to disperse another $4.5 billion in grant assistance that's going to go against the inflation that keeps making everything more expensive. To Ukraine in the coming weeks, bringing its budget assistance to $13 billion since the start of the war, and called on others to improve the scale, predictability, and grant component of disbursements. Georgieva said the IMF planned to work with the Ukrainian authorities to set up a new Ukraine Economic Forum suggested by Zelensky to share information, calibrate financial needs, and coordinate macroeconomic developments and policies. She said the IMF would start talks soon with Ukraine about a new IMF monitoring instrument known as Program Monitoring with board involvement, and a comprehensive macroeconomic framework that would clarify external financing needs. That in turn should pave the way for a full-fledged IMF program once conditions allow, Georgieva said. Zelensky said Ukraine would continue to press for an IMF lending program of about $20 billion, an additional $2 billion in targeted credits to rebuild its electric power infrastructure, and up to $5 billion in credit limits to buy natural gas and coal. So there you go, more money just disappearing into the Donbass region. I think we've got 2 more here, and then we're caught up again for the news, but I do want to go and look at some of the other stuff that we have here. No, I got 3 more. From the Hill, these 4 countries sided with Russia in UN vote on Ukraine annexations. From Julia Mueller. UN General Assembly on Wednesday voted to condemn Russia's annexation of 4 occupied areas of Ukraine amid the ongoing war, but 4 countries sided with Russia in the vote. Of the UN's 193-member body, 143 voted in favor of the resolution criticizing Russia's illegal so-called referenda, with 35 abstaining, according to an update. Syria, North Korea, Belarus, and Nicaragua joined Russia as the 5 opposing votes. The opposition club is nearly the same as the 5 votes in March against a resolution condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Syria, North Korea, Belarus joined Russia both times. Eritrea voted against condemning the invasion back in March, while Nicaragua voted against condemning the annexation on Wednesday. The now-passed resolution calls on the UN's member states not to recognize Russia's annexation move and calls for Russia to rescind its claims over Ukrainian land. Moscow made the controversial move to hold Russian-controlled referenda and annex parts of Ukraine amid a number of battlefield setbacks, including a counteroffensive from Ukraine that forced the Russian troops to the border in some areas. Have you guys asked the people in the region what they think about all this? I think they should get to decide whether they want to go live with mommy or daddy. Mommy being Zelensky and daddy being Putin. But they should get a say in this, shouldn't they? I would think. I don't think they're going to, but I would think that they should get a say in this. From the Blaze, a little bit of breakdown news on a story from last week. Horowitz, who exactly are the marijuana offenders Biden just pardoned? From Daniel Horowitz. Unless you are at the Capitol on January 6th, federal prosecutors don't target you for prison for simply possessing marijuana. In fact, in this era of marijuana as the national pastime, you won't find anyone originally targeted by prosecutors for nothing more than simple possession serving time in prison. So when Biden makes a grand announcement that he is pardoning all those convicted of simple possession, you know there's more to it than meets the eye. I'm announcing a pardon of all federal offenses of simple possession. There are thousands of people who are convicted for marijuana possession who may be denied employment or housing or educational opportunities as a result, Biden said in a video last Thursday. My pardon will remove this burden on them, man. Come on. Thousands of people denied employment opportunities. Ask yourself this question. In an era of open-air drug markets in plain sight in most major cities, what sort of federal prosecutor is spending time and money to go after someone for simple possession of marijuana? The answer is they are not. So who is in federal prison for simple marijuana possession? Obviously people who likely had much more serious charges but pleaded down to marijuana possession if Biden really is correct In asserting that these people are such low-level criminals, why not push to unseal their sentencing reports, which would contain their entire criminal history? But it's not the fact that these people were targeted by the feds. They are likely much more serious offenders, unless they're conservatives. Why would anyone be in the federal system at all for marijuana, especially in this era? Because they're foreign nationals. According to data compiled by the U.S. Sentencing Commission, in fiscal year 2013, before the total decline of border enforcement, almost 91% of all federal marijuana offenders in the system were non-citizens. 91.5% of them were arrested at or near the border. That's interesting. What this demonstrates is that this wasn't a matter of the U.S. Marshals picking up random people in cities for smoking a joint. These were hardcore cartel traffickers who not only bring in marijuana, but some of the other legal drugs responsible for wiping out tens of thousands of young Americans. It's simply scandalous for Biden not to disclose the nature of those arrests and the identity of the individuals. Now, I don't know if this is true. I obviously I see the information in front of me of who's arrested there. I don't know if this was the particular vote buy that Biden was looking for. But it's interesting, the correlation statistics around this. I would have to do some more digging, and yes, I would have to see the sentencing records of the people who are doing this. Now, honestly, I understood this as the fact of they were going to let all the people out of prison who had the civil convictions in the past. But then it turns out that there really aren't that many people in prison for just that. Or expunge the records, even if you just paid a fine on the federal level. Expunge that record so you can go out and get a job. But if we're looking at something like this, and this is having to do with immigration and trafficking, we need to look into this. I do take this with a grain of salt, though, because this is a Glenn Beck website, and Daniel Horowitz very clearly is against any sort of legalization whatsoever, something that he and I differ on. From the Daily Wire, self-described incel faces life in prison after pleading guilty to attempted murder of 3,000 women. From Ryan Saavedra. By the way, this is a witch hunt. I did pre-read this one. A self-described incel is facing life in prison after he pleaded guilty in federal court today for attempting to murder 3,000 women. The DOJ said in a statement that Tress Genko, 22 of Hillsboro, Ohio, admitted to targeting and surveilling women at an Ohio university in 2020. He was arrested by federal law enforcement officers last year and has remained in custody ever since. An incel, short for involuntary celibate, refers to a small group of men who harbor extreme anger and rage at women for what they believe in their minds as being rejected by them for romantic or sexual relationships. Thankfully, law enforcement partners working closely together prevented a deadly killing spree targeting women, said Special Agent in Charge J. William Rivers for FBI Cincinnati Field Division. Genko's hate-filled beliefs and actions were extremely dangerous and could have resulted in irreparable harm to our community and many precious lives. We urge the public to report concerning behavior to the FBI and local police to help prevent future violence. Genko said that he wanted to slaughter women out of hatred, jealousy, and revenge, and referred to death as the Great Equalizer. The DOJ said that investigators found a note from Genko that indicated that he wanted to aim big during an act of terror by killing up to 3,000 women. Genko made a reference to a date in which other incel terrorists actually carried out this attack, killing 6 people and injuring 14 others back in 2014. The day that Genko wrote his manifesto, he researched different sororities that were on campus of an undisclosed university in the state. The day that he conducted surveillance at the university in 2020, he also searched online for topics relating to how to carry out a shooting crime. When authorities raided the place that he was living, they found firearm with a bump stock, attached loaded magazines, body armor, boxes of ammo, and modified handgun that had serial numbers filed off. Oh, really? The statement said that he pled guilty to a single count of attempting to commit a hate crime. The statement added that since the attempt involved killing other people, it was punishable by up to life in prison. This is crap. This entire article is crap. And this is a rogue FBI that is going off and running on its own thing. First off, why are the feds getting involved in this? This appears to be entirely in-state. The Ohio State Patrol should be dealing with this, not the FBI. That's the first problem that I have with this. The second, and the big problem that I have with this, is he didn't attempt to murder anybody. But I'm guessing he's got, I've got right-wing ideals. So now it's a matter of he's planning to, and, we can't go and get him the help that he needs. We have to throw him in prison for the rest of his damn life. This is disgusting. Until he fired off the first shot, under most state laws, he did not attempt murder. Yes, he was planning on it. Yes, we can probably throw him in the asylum for a little while to either get him cleaned up or keep him away from people for a while, but life in prison for something that he didn't even attempt to do? No, that is crap. That is garbage. What do you want to bet? He was a Trump supporter, too. And speaking of crime, from Jack Posobiec, Georgia high school football star, 18, is shot dead in mall parking lot. Two teenagers are arrested. And yet we have no conversation about in fact, it almost looks like everybody involved on the victim side is already, we forgive the people who perpetrated this. Reading from the Daily Mail. Georgia high school football star, 18, is shot dead in mall parking lot while on a date with his girlfriend. Two teenagers, aged 18 and 19, are arrested as cops investigate motive. From Vanessa Cerna for DailyMail.com. Two teenage boys have been arrested for shooting dead a Georgia high school football star in a mall parking lot while he was on a date with his girlfriend. Elijah DeWitt, 18, was shot dead in the parking lot of a Dave & Buster's outside the Sugarloaf Mill in Lawrenceville on October 5th following an altercation with two others. Police arrested Kimari Brown, 18, and Chandler Richardson, 19, in South Carolina 2 days later. The two are both from Lawrenceville. Detectives are still working to investigate the motive behind this incident. It appears that the suspects and the victim were familiar with each other, and when they encountered each other in the parking lot, an altercation took place, and then the shooting, Gwinnett Police Department said in a statement. DeWitt was on a date with his girlfriend, Bailey Riedling, at the time of his death. In a 911 emergency call, Riedling can be heard screaming in the background. I was at Dave & Buster's. I heard people screaming. I looked towards my right, and I see someone lay down, the person said in a 911 call obtained by Fox News. I've never seen anything like this, man. Bryan and Richardson were charged with malice and felony murder. The two were also charged with possession of a firearm and aggravated assault. The duo will be extradited from Anderson County to Gwinnett County on October 10th. A candlelight vigil for DeWitt was held on Sunday, with nearly 100 people gathered to honor the Jefferson High School student. Definitely the worst day of my life, Dawn Erwitt, Elijah's mom, told Fox News. His life just came completely to a screeching halt in the woods. Erwitt told 11 Alive that her son was dedicated to football and strived to be number one. Despite losing their son, Dawn and her husband Craig have forgiven his alleged killers. Why? Forgiveness is for the forgiver, Craig told Fox News. We don't want the hate in this household. Elijah died on his father's birthday, according to 11 Alive. So, that's what we see for that, and that's horrifying. They cross state lines, by the way. All right. That is all that we have time for today on Main News, but this being Thursday, we will end the show with a thing that I like and a few things. I've got 4 on schedule for this that I hate. I don't know if I'll go through all 4 of them. I think they're all really quick hitters except for... Actually, I do think they're all quick hitters, so there'll be 4 really quick things that I hate, 1 thing that I really like, and that's going to take a little bit of time, but 4 really quick hitters on things that I hate today. Thing that I like. I have found what I want to be when I grow up. Everybody? Maybe not as dictatorial because, as I've said before, I would be the world's worst dictator in the world because my platform, and even if I was the president of this great nation, my platform would be the same. Leave me alone and don't kill each other. But I found the path that I want to go down here. From Insider, photos. And a lot of photos with this here. Meet President Baugh, the self-proclaimed dictator of a micronation in Nevada that you've probably never heard of. From Joshua Zitzer. It all started in '77 when a 15-year-old Kevin Baugh and his childhood best friend James Spielman watched The Mouse That Roared, a satirical '59 movie about a tiny fictional nation waging war on the U.S. I was struck by the imagination and creativity of that, said the 60-year-old who asked to be referred to as Your Excellency or President Baugh during a phone interview with Insider. 4 decades on, he's lost contact with that friend, but the dream of ruling his own miniature country lives on. Baugh is now the self-proclaimed benevolent dictator of the Republic of Malaysia, a 1-acre micronation with a population of 35 in northwestern Nevadan desert. I want a 1-acre micronation. Actually, I'd rather probably have like 180 acres. The micronation was born at a suburban house in Portland, Oregon in '77. It was originally known as the Grand Republic of Voldstein. Baugh appointed himself prime minister and Spielman was made the king. Baugh conceded that back then it was a little more than a childish reverie. It was more fictional, I guess you could say. There was no internet back then, so we made it up as we went along. Spielman eventually abandoned the project, but Baugh continued working on it sporadically while he served in the U.S. Army. Talk about having dual loyalties. He left the Army in the 90s and settled in Nevada with his family. Around this time, he started talking about the micronation more seriously. The internet came along and I was able to see that other people had created their own countries, Baugh explained, so I took Malaysia from just being on paper to having our own website. Baugh continued researching micronations online, finding information on how he could fully realize one of his own. A micronation is a self-proclaimed independent state whose sovereignty is not recognized by the international community. For example, world governments and the UN do not recognize them as legitimate. They're often small, the outgrowth of a single individual, and viewed as trivial enough to be ignored by the established nation their land sits on. The US knows Malaysia exists, Baugh says, but basically ignores it. There are at least 67 separate micronations in the world, Insider previously reported. Baugh learned that micronations are usually formed by claiming the land that they live on as their own territory, so in '98 he bought a small plot in Nevada and claimed it as the homeland of our country, which was then called the Kingdom of Malaysia. For a short period afterward, it was ruled as a communist dictatorship, Baugh said. The communist iconography the micronation used riled up locals, so he decided to turn Malaysia into a capitalist military dictatorship. Oh, jeez. I love every part of this. Baugh is the self-proclaimed benevolent dictator of what is now called the Republic of Malaysia. You know, this reminds me of, and we didn't wind up going over there in the Fallout 3 playthrough, but this kind of reminds me of the Republic of Dave. I mean, I'm not not the kind of dictator that makes people disappear in the night or anything like that. We're a family nation that would really irritate the family if someone just suddenly disappears. Yeah, probably. Citizens of Malasha, who are all members of Kevin Baugh's family, celebrate Christmas together in 2019. Oh. There are 35 citizens, all of whom are related to Baugh, which is going to make for a really, really interesting table of nations later on down the road. The human citizens all have dual citizenship within the U.S. It helps to have that U.S. citizenship, Baugh said, otherwise we wouldn't be able to go to Walmart or something like that. We'd all starve to death. So you're an independent nation, so-called, but you can't be independent. You have to depend on trade from another nation. It's still funny. It's still hilarious. Citizens vote in U.S. elections and pay U.S. taxes, which Baugh jokingly refers to as foreign aid. Baugh said Malashans have very positive relations with local communities on the border. They make regular appearances in the nearby town of Dayton, Nevada, and participate in the annual Nevada Day Parade in Carson City. So funny. I love that. I love everything about that, by the way. And now for a few things that I hate. Oh, and by the way, Kevin Baugh, good luck and Godspeed. It has a currency pegged to the value of cookie dough and a navy consisting of 2 kayaks, by the way. I love this. I love every part of that. Now for a few things that I hate. Number 1, coming from The Guardian. I thought my boyfriend of 10 years was going to propose, then he told me he was trans. I would consider myself an ally, but I wasn't prepared for the shock and confusion I'd feel when the person I thought I'd spend my life with told me their secret. His secret, but... This is... I have no author given on... Oh, yeah, we do. Phoebe McDowell. It was 3 a.m. and I'd had a lot to drink. 2 reasons why I was pressing my boyfriend of 10 years on why he hadn't yet proposed. If it's been 10 years, that's a good question, is why the hell haven't you proposed? Two. That should be your magic number right then and there. 2. We were strong and happy and loved each other madly, so his reticence seemed ludicrous to me when sober, let alone drunk. I suspect it was my ceaseless questioning that ultimately blew a fuse in his brain, because that's when he told me his secret. Oh no, they could probably still, depending on what state, they could probably still do that. Oh wait, no, that's nationwide still. When I woke up, he was gone. I watched his WhatsApp status like it was the heart monitor of an ailing relative. The second I saw online, I called and asked him to come home to talk, to answer the questions that I'd scribbled illegibly on a half-folded piece of A4 paper. He walked to the door and sat down, his face masked with fear. What were you trying to tell me? I asked hopefully, all too aware on how different things can look when alcohol is no longer shaping your every thought. I have gender identity issues, he blurted, eyes fixed on the door. I don't identify with being a male, he said. My throat thickened. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I knew this person better than anyone in the world, and I could in no way reconcile him with the words coming out of his mouth. Well, what do you identify with? I pleaded, panicking. I don't know, like non-binary or... Oh my god. What was he about to say? Trans? The word flooded my body with a surreal disbelief. I was already sure, cold, and emphatic this was done. We are done, but why? He implored. Because I don't want to be with a woman. It was surprising to me how obvious this fact was, because everything else was suddenly underwater. But I don't know how far it'll go yet, he said. I don't know anything yet, except that our relationship is more important than my gender. My questions were redundant. The purpose was to establish where they go from here, but in the private theater of my mind, the curtains closed at every turn. Soon, my sister was outside, trying to articulate why I'd asked her to collect me, and why I had a suitcase. She knew something was wrong, and of course, but she had no idea of the magnitude. He thinks he might be trans. I couldn't get it out of my mouth. Wait, what are you saying, Phoebes? He thinks he might be trans. We stood on the dark street, cobbles glossed with rain, and wept. Her tears soaked my shoulder and mine hers. We drove back to hers. I sat in silence, numb, watching the rain blur the brake lights in front of me, while she continued to sob for me, for him, and I guess for the future brother-in-law she just lost. For a week in January, she held my hand every night while I stared at the ceiling, watching the alarm clock announce the time in a glaring sequence of oblongs: 12:10, 2:36, 3:30, 5:05, 6:16. The second 0700 hit, I got in the shower so I could just cry in peace. And the story goes on to go talk about this girl and the fact that she had just spent 10 years in a relationship with, I guess for lack of better words, a girl. I don't know. What I can say this to this Guardian, by the way, I don't know where you're at. Doesn't really say. Guardian is a UK thing, so this might actually be in the UK, so I don't know if importing somebody like that would be, but I'm telling you right now, if you want an actual masculine experience, I can tell you right off the bat, I'm never going to turn into a girl. So, Phoebe McDowell, call me. I won't make you wait 10 years. Alright, another thing that I hate. The state's always got to get its cut, and this is from the CCS blog, so this is not Green Check verified, but it's the official blog of the Sheriff's Department in Charlotte County, Florida. A roofing contractor was arrested for conducting business in Charlotte County without a Florida license. At approximately 1:30 p.m. on Friday, October 7th, in the Charlotte County Economic Crimes Unit, received a call from an investigator at the Department of Business and Professional Regulation. The investigator informed that the CCSO detective that a roofing company, Duke Roofing, being this close to Iowa, I automatically hear Dubuque from this, was found to be in Charlotte County conducting business without a Florida license, and that a homeowner had already agreed to a contract with them. The homeowner was contacted, who advised that he had met with Duke roofing employee at the community center in Cape Hayes Boulevard. After receiving an estimate from the employee at his home, the homeowner agreed to a written contract for a roof repair. The DBPR investigator met with the CCSO detective at the community center and located the area where the Duke Roofing Company and trucks and trailers were parked. At that time, they spoke with Terrence Duke, owner of the company. Duke advised that he read the governor's state of emergency order regarding contractors and that he understood it to mean contractors from out of state were permitted to work in Florida. He went on to say that an employee had made contact with the DBPR and that the representative had given him permission to conduct business in Florida, though he cannot provide the name of the representatives. I don't know, especially in the middle of a disaster, why you have to have a business license in Florida to go back and help rebuild massive amounts of damage, unless, of course, the people in Florida are going to go back and gouge, which I'm guessing has something to do with this, but a reminder that even if you're in a state of absolute disaster and some of your people are homeless in your state, the government wants their cut. I've got 3 things that I hate. This will be a quick hitter. Exclusive. Boston Dynamics pledges not to weaponize its robots. Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, right. From Ina Fried, author of Axios Login. Several robotics companies, including Boston Dynamics, are pledging not to support the weaponization of their products and are calling on others in the industry to do the same, according to a letter first shared with Axios. Yeah, then that government money is going to come back in, and that's going to go out the window. Robots, like drones before them, have a wide range of peaceful and even life-saving uses, but can be turned into war-fighting machines too. The open letter highlights the erosion of consumer trust in robots as among the reasons not to allow them to be used as weapons. Yeah, what happens when government contract money gets involved? Because I'm willing to bet that that mind's going to get changed real quick when you have $1 billion for the intellectual property. We believe that adding weapons to robots that are remotely or autonomously operated, widely available to the public, and capable of navigating to previously inaccessible locations where people live and work raises new risks of harm and serious ethical issues, the company said in a letter. It's amazing how many zeros it takes to make ethical issues go away, though. The companies pledge not to add weapons technology themselves or support the others doing so. And when possible, they said they will review customers' plans in hopes of avoiding those who would turn the robots into weapons, in addition to exploring technical features that could prevent such use. Raytheon has entered the chat. Because I don't believe that that's not going to be a thing. In fact, I'm pretty positive that it's going to be a thing. But we'll continue to watch and see. And the last part, in pure unmitigated stupidity. Because you knew they were going to have to go find something else to be upset about. The New York Post reports Gen Z canceled the hostile thumbs up emoji and wants to ban these 9 others. From Jack Hobbs and Alex Mitchell. Buckle up, cancel culture has officially come for emojis. Gen Zers are calling out the popular thumbs up emoji for being rude and hostile, even saying they feel attacked whenever they see it used in the workplace. Dude, we're doomed, aren't we? After a Reddit poster confessed to being not adult enough to be comfortable with the thumbs up emoji reaction, others chimed in to agree and call out their common emojis such as the red heart. For younger people, the thumbs up emoji used to be extremely passive-aggressive, a 24-year-old Redditor wrote. It's super rude if someone just sends you a thumbs up, they added. So I also had a weird time adjusting because my workplace is the same. Older workers appear flummoxed by the reaction, noting that they use the thumbs up in work-related chats to signal, I approve, or I understand and will obey, or, as the Dave Rubin clip goes, I agree with that. Part of the issue is saying that young people tend to use thumbs up in jest. I only use it sarcastically, though sometimes I'm not even sure if the irony comes across. Barry Kennedy, 24, told the Post he said that he only used it to communicate with boomers like his parents or older colleagues. One anonymous office worker chalked it up to a generational communicational cultural difference. Everyone my age in the office doesn't do it, but the Gen X people always do it, they wrote. Took me a bit to adjust and get out of my head that it means that they're mad at me. Well, I mean, you could always be like the Vault Boy and be using it to judge whether or not you're safe from the nuclear fallout or not. That actually might become a thing in the near future. If the mushroom cloud is bigger than your thumb, you're in danger from the nuclear fallout. Instead, Gen Zers said they prefer a typed-out response. We're people and we have words to use, Kim Law, a 25-year-old social worker from Massapequa, told the Post. If I took the time to write a thoughtful message, then you shouldn't be responding with the bare minimum. Fix it and write something really real back. We're doomed, aren't we? Several Reddit users agreed with the decision to cancel the emoji, saying that using it in a work environment makes the team members unaccommodating and seem unfriendly. The official list of cancels emojis includes, by the way, thumbs up, red heart, the OK hand, checkmark, poo, loud crying face, monkey covering eyes, monkeys jump the fence, clapping hands, lipstick kiss mark, grimacing face. We're doomed, aren't we? Dude, I see that red face there and I'm highly offended right now. Alright, now that we're doomed, let's get the hell out of here. I can't believe 16 to 25-year-olds, well, probably younger than that. I can't believe this is the world that my nieces and nephews are going to grow up in, that they're offended by a thumbs up. Are you kidding me? I'm not kidding you, by the way, either. We're not going to make it as a species, are we? Alright. Crap, it's 10-2 already. Which means I gotta throw pants on and get the hell out of here. So, with that, we are heading out of here for the day. Thanks everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat. And if you are just lurking, get a last minute message in, because as long as you got one message in, I can put your name up on the sheet here and say thank you at the end of the show tomorrow. And we'll go over some of your live chats again tomorrow as well. So come back. Join us for that. It's going to be an awesome time. I love doing that part of the program, by the way. There are some things that sometimes I can't read because we are trying to compete with the AM radio audience, which I think we're doing a good job on again. 12 watching at peak, which means that we'll get up there. Hopefully we'll see if we can't bring some people into the end now too. See if we can't get that number to 20. Maybe someday we'll get 4,000 people watching at once, but we'll see what happens with that. Otherwise, come back here and join tomorrow for more news, more headlines, the live chat, and everything else that we're going to do here tomorrow over on Contemporary. Stick around, see what if we can find somebody to raid. But other than that, we're out of here for the day. Thank you. Take care. Have a good afternoon. Check out the Daily Ignoramus later on, and we'll see you next time over here on Contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.